Logic. Thank you. Logic Liaison template updates with Johanna, Loomba, Andrea, Zhou, and Evan French. And I see they're on, looking forward to it. And the upcoming sessions, we're headed towards our summer break. We've got a session in July 18th next week, harmonizing units and values of quantitative data elements in very large nationally pooled EHR data set by Caden Bradwell and Richard Moffat. So the unit harmonization paper. And July 25th, vaccine effectiveness domain team and the monthly recovered lung COVID project team updates, Nadia Safdar and Emily and Melissa. And then we break for August and the first week or two of September. So we're now up to 5.5 COVID positive cases, quite remarkable. Okay, so on to Logic Liaison, template updates. I'm not sure who's going first, but I know it's not me, so I'm going to stop sharing. And who's kicking this off?
It should be Johanna. Is she a panelist?
Let's see, panelist. I don't actually see her on, actually. I thought she was. I don't see her listed in as an attendee. And I don't see her listed as a panelist. Anybody know how to track her down?
I just sent her a Slack message.
Great. Ah, there she is. Welcome, Johanna.
Hi, sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. So you've been nominated to be the first speaker. So if you could share your screen, if you got slides. Okay, we see it. Okay, looks good.
Great. So we're just going to give you an update from the last time we spoke with you. We've made a couple changes and additions to our templates, and so we'll go over those today. Sorry, I'm trying to make the screen progress here. So first we're going to talk about the severity score, which has been widely in use using a variable that was originally created for the cohort paper. And now we've made a Logic Liaison severity score for people to use in our templates. We're going to go over some other additions to the confirmed COVID positive patient template and talk to you about a new all patients template that's available now in the Enclave. And for both those two templates, Andrea's facilitated custom variable creation, so she'll go over that process briefly. There's a recording that also talks you through that, but this is just kind of a heads up for those who are not aware of that. And then some new functionality around study-specific date indexing and quality template additions and enhancements. So for the COVID severity scale, there's a WHO working group that had developed this scale, and here's the reference. And this is the same scale that was used by the N3C cohort paper. you see that we have uninfected patients, patients who were ambulatory at the time of their COVID infections, those that were hospitalized, and may have needed oxygen support for the severe diseases, and then patients who are deceased. And so the cohort paper had a very specific kind of aim, and they were looking at a certain subset of sites and created this value kind of in the context of the study that they did for their first analysis. They did require that there be a COVID index date in order to determine what the severity of these events was. And we have the same thing in our template. We have a COVID index date. They only used lab positive patients for that COVID index date, but at the request of leadership, our templates also include those that have a UO 7.1 code as well. So if they don't have a lab positive test on file, but there was a COVID diagnosis, then that first COVID diagnosis is used as their index date. So we also calculate scores for those patients. Visit selection was a little bit different between these two pipelines. The main thing for the logic liaison template is that we're looking really at infections that happened in the 16, or hospitalizations that happened in the 16 days following the confirmed infection, or the day prior, to account for those infections that weren't quite captured on the day that they came in. This is consistent with the definition of a COVID-associated hospitalization that we've been using from the beginning in our templates. The cohort paper did a little bit more complex of a selection to find hospitalizations that could be associated with COVID, and they used the most severe visit selection. We always use that first hospitalization at the time of infection. There are a few reasons for this change, but most of all, it's really evolved over time in terms of how patients are tested for COVID. And as opposed to the early days when this cohort paper was worked on, we now really see patients routinely being tested for COVID. And in our own hospital where I work, the majority of patients who are COVID positive who are in the hospital are not hospitalized for their COVID. And in general, using observational data, we have to remember that causality can be maybe inferred in certain instances, but we do not know the causality when we see these codes co-occurring. So people have to be very careful in making assumptions about that, and severity is certainly no exception. So we just went the most conservative route of looking really at the first hospitalization at the time of infection and looking at severity at that time. The cohort paper had eliminated some sites from their analysis just based on their own criteria around data quality. And of course, data quality has evolved over time, and sites that maybe didn't have as robust a data in the beginning have better data. And in general, our logic liaison templates do these calculations for everyone. And then we provide data quality templates that allow the researchers to narrow the data partners that they include in their analysis at a later time. But we do not upfront eliminate data partners from this kind of value assignment. And then age, the cohort paper did not include patients below 18, and this pipeline does include all. Again, researchers are welcome to apply filtration themselves to exclude a certain patient population. And you can absolutely modify this severity scale and, again, be very careful about causality. Just knowing that something happened at the time of something does not mean that it was caused by it. And so, we've seen a lot of papers about COVID severity, and it's just very important that we interpret it as being temporally related and not necessarily a causal thing. It gets even more important when you're looking at patients with a other condition like stroke or heart attack or some other thing that may have landed them in the hospital, and to not assume that all their hospital events were caused by the COVID infection itself. We're still giving you the severity score at the time of the infection, but causality is definitely not assumed. So in order to emphasize that, our templates provide you values that just kind of reflect that temporal nature, that this is really just happening around the time of the COVID index date, and that it does not mean that the COVID infection was itself severe. You have to do much more complex things in your research specific question to really tease that out. Right? And then, Andrea, do you want to go ahead and grab the screen from here, or do you want me to keep sharing?
So
the link, if that's okay.
What's that?
I said if you could keep sharing until I have to
Okay.
open the link, that would be great.
Okay.
Thanks. So some other additions we've made to the confirmed COVID positive template include several new indicators such as flags for each day on which someone has tested positive for their COVID PCR antigen test and or a COVID antibody test, and their days that they've tested negative. So that's at a visit level. And then we've also added the reinfection variable. So we're currently defining that as patients who have a PCR or antigen positive flag greater than 60 days after their COVID index event date. And that index event date could be either their lab positive or their COVID diagnosis, as Johanna mentioned. And then the main third addition is that it's now very easy to customize any of your concept sets for 5 of the 8 main domains that people are searching in. So that would be conditions, observations, drugs, procedures, and devices. And I'll show you a little bit more about that in a second. There are a couple additional changes that will come later this month. So the first being updated definition for the patient death indicator, which will include patients who are discharged to hospice. And then we're also adding in vaccination counts before and after COVID for these patients. Next slide, please. So the new template is the all patients template. So this is just everyone in the enclave. We find similar facts as the COVID positive template for this group, but it's just not split by an index date since not everyone in this group has one. And so as a result of that, there won't be some of those facts that are special in COVID positives, such as severity or reinfection, since they didn't have an initial infection to begin with. And then there are 2 new flags in this template that were added after its initial release, that being the confirmed COVID patient flag and the possible COVID patient flag. So these allow you to decipher who falls in that COVID positive group, and then a subset of the possible COVID patients we are able to identify using a positive antibody test, a long COVID diagnosis, or a long COVID clinic visit at this time. We're hoping to soon be able to also identify those who are brought in as matched controls, and then this possible group will grow a little bit to contain those suspect early 2020 cases, as well as some other more obscure possible COVID definitions such as MIS-C or pneumonia due to COVID. For this template, there are the same updates that will come later this month. So updated patient death to include hospice, and then vaccination counts as their total. So these vaccination counts won't be split pre and post COVID, since not everyone has an index date. Okay, so now I will take the screen and I will show everyone some of those changes, such as the ability to customize your custom inputs. And this is a workbook created using synthetic data or Synthia data, since we can't show the real values here. So essentially there is this node that will connect your custom input to those 5 domains I was just talking about. So you can see it's connected to conditions, observations, procedures, devices, and drugs. The default is our logic liaison set of concept sets. And you'll notice here's the concept set name, the variable, the domain in which it's found, and then, or the domain or domains in which the concepts are found. And then there is a column that allows you to specify whether you want to look for that particular concept set pre or post-COVID, as well as during their that first COVID hospitalization Johanna mentioned. So this is the one for the COVID positive patient template. The all patients template also allows you to have an input like this. It just doesn't have this last column because there is no indexing. And so to modify this, which is the default data set, you can copy and paste this into a manual entry node that you can just create here, and then it'll look something like this, and you can delete whichever ones are irrelevant to you or add your own, and just replace the input by selecting whichever data frame. So this would be the default, or you could select your custom one here. And then you would just run your pipeline, and then you would get those variables created in this visit level and the patient level data sets. All right, and Evan, if you want to take over.
Just a moment, I'll share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a few templates that I've been working on. This first one is called data density by site and domain. I actually presented this originally at one of these meetings back in March, so it may be familiar. And what this does is it calculates the site density for each site's contribution to all of their OMOP tables. So for example, down here, you can see how we're calculating it for the visit occurrence table. We would take the number of OMOP records and visit occurrence for a given site and divide that by the number of person records for that given site. And that gives us the site density for visit occurrences. So then we calculate these median and absolute deviations and throw them into a heat map here. So you can see which sites are contributing more, a higher density, and which are below or closer to the median. So a couple things that we've added here. We've added this CDM name bar, so you can see that we're grouping by the contributing CDM type. And we've also, this was the original visualization. We've added 2 additional visualizations. So instead of just doing absolute MADs, we're doing directional as well. So you can see if it was the density is above the median, or if it's below. Orange means that they're contributing above median, and blue means that their density is lower than median. We're also showing the standardized density, and standardized density normalizes the density for each OMOP table between 0 and 1, with 1 being the densest. And you can see who's got the absolute highest density for each of these OMOP contributions. The next template I'm going to talk about is a new template, and this is the facts density by site. And this is going to take in a patient level fact table, like the all facts table, all patients fact table that Andrea just talked about. And it visualizes facts density by site for each column in that input data set. So for columns that are numeric type, such as the 0 and 1 binary indicators that template has, we just take an average to get our density. There are also other columns that might be numeric, like counts for a number, or like the average number of visits per person. We are also convert to numeric. Other things are categorical, such as hospitalization start date, COVID severity, things like that. And for those, we just do an is null in the column, which converts it to a binary bit flag, and take the average of that. And using that, we can demonstrate the density for all of the columns by CDM. And we do this using the same 3 visualizations as the previous template does. And we got one more template that's coming soon, and this is the study specific fact indexing. And this is similar to the patient fact table, but instead of orienting our facts around the COVID diagnosis date or the COVID hospitalization window, it orients in its output facts, whether they occurred pre, post, some study-specific indicator. So I've got an example here. So this is an example input data set for, for a given person ID. We've got the visit dates. So this is the visit level facts and whether they had a given indicator on that date. It adds these columns for was this visit pre the study specific indicator here is long COVID. And then it condenses that into this final output data set where it says for this indicator MI, myocardial infarction, did it occur before long COVID, after long COVID, or during this specified window? And the user can specify the size of the window. Here by default, it's 1 week before and 1 week after the specified index column of long COVID. And yeah, so that's coming soon. It's out for code reviews now in the Logic Liaison team.
Evan, can you go to the last slide there too? There's one more.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, we always have several people amongst our team do code reviews, and so that's why these are not yet available in the knowledge store, but we thought we would tell you all about them anyway since they'll be out in the next week or so. So this is one more that's coming soon. This has been requested by multiple people, combining variables, from these Logic Liaison templates. So there'll be a sister template that you can also import if you want to look for same day occurrence of things. So one example would be like here we have 2 drug components, which if given on the same day would suggest that they were Evusheld. And so we have 3 concept sets on the left side, that one for each ingredient on its own, and then one for combined encoding of this drug that represents both ingredients. So we have 3 concept sets. All 3 would appear in our all facts in our final summary table. You could import the sister template and you could add columns that would flag the same day administration of these 2 ingredients, and then also flag the days where either of these 2 things happened, either a same day administration or an Evusheld record, and so you could end up with any Evusheld administration. So this is just one example. The template actually uses, again, long COVID, so we have long COVID clinic, long COVID diagnosis, and we have the and ors for combining those columns, but it's parameterized, so you can just type in your column names for the variables that you would like to combine with basically these same day criteria or an either or type of criteria. So pretty simple logic, but we find that people who are less familiar with the templates, it would take them more time to enhance them in the ways that Evan was just talking about, with index dates that are study specific or with this kind of combining of variables. So we're just providing some simple kind of adjunct templates that you can add on. So look for those soon. They'll be announced in Slack. We will announce once those are live in the knowledge store. And I did put in chat that there is a vaccine template for detailed vaccine facts. If you search Logic Liaison or you use the link that I provided in the chat, that is available. And then, as Andrea mentioned, we'll be bringing in some of those key elements to the overall fact table template, so you don't have to do that unioning on your own. But the vaccine template is already available. So search Logic Liaison, you'll find any of our templates, and you can come to office hours Tuesdays and Thursdays to ask questions of Palantir or the education lead, Sean, or the Logic Liaisons. We have other support members there as well, so just come anytime you need help for your projects, and we will all work together to answer your questions. I think that's all for us.
Well, thank you. This looks it's extremely useful. What mechanisms do you have for when people use your templates? Are the current rules such that the papers reference your group, or how are the use of these things tracked?
We were recently added as a core support team, and so we're part of the overall big attribution statement. Logic Liaisons is a pretty big group, but those who are actively writing the code or doing the code reviews and validation are providing the office hour support. Those are listed now in attribution, and then we can report contributions if we've individually contributed a lot to a paper. We can also do that. There are statistics for template use, so we are able to track the number of times that our templates are ingested and used in projects, but we don't always know if they directly went into the work in a manuscript, right? But we can see that they were used in the project workspace.
That's great. So then presumably if there is very close interaction, then a Logic Liaison becomes a masthead author. Otherwise, it's a non-masthead author.
Correct. All those things occur. Yeah.
That's great. Okay. So let's see, other questions. Let's see. See, there's some things in the chat. They've been, looks like they've been.
I think it was all from me.
Yes.
Talking to
Okay.
myself.
No, this is great. This is extremely valuable. Do you see is there been discussion or any move towards adapting some of these things to other domains outside of N3C? Certainly the sort of design templates and mechanisms, especially the spreadsheets, seem very useful. They'd have to be obviously coded differently.
Yeah, well, I think our all patients template is a good, example of something that could be very quickly adapted to any other disease. You could also take the COVID positive and then use that as a framework for any other confirmed condition, right? If you wanted to adapt that, I would be pretty quick. If there was like an N3C tenant perhaps that focused on a certain disease population, then you would probably adapt that particular template to use it. But the all patients template is all you have to do is change, actually in both the templates, you just change your list of concept sets and variable names in a spreadsheet like you mentioned, Joel. So that takes just simple inputs asking you which domains these variables come from and things, and then you just run the pipeline and you've generated a whole new set of variables. So it's pretty adaptable.
Great. Oh, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, thank you. Any other comments, thoughts, questions? Okay. Well, this is great work. We have new message. Thank you for joining today. All right. So thank you for really fantastic work. That was really a great overview, and we'll give folks half an hour back, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.